For our 1978 election coverage, Channel 7 taped interviews with local candidates at the Democrat and Republican headquarters. All candidates were asked about their personal backgrounds, their qualifications, and their major official goals. Candidates for some offices were asked additional questions about specific issues. The candidates' responses to each question will be shown sequentially so that the voters will have a chance to compare their answers. This is your chance to meet the candidates once again.
My name is David Reed, and I'm the Republican candidate for state representative from the 51st District.
My name is Marilyn Schultz. I'm seeking re-election for state representative for District 51. I've served in the legislature for 6 years now. I was first elected in 1972. And when I'm not serving in the legislature or on interim study commissions, I'm working at my small retail store in Bloomington.
Well, my qualifications are really basically 10 years of training and experience in the areas of financial management in private industry, most recently with Honeywell Incorporated, and a master's in business administration from Indiana University in economics and finance. And right now I'm finishing up my doctoral work in economics and public finance.
Well, I think qualifications for state representative are basically that you're taking part in your community activities in one way or another. You're a citizen of the United States and of Indiana, and that you're interested in working to help represent the people in your district. It doesn't take any particular kind of degree or experience, only that you're involved in the community and have some knowledge of the needs of the community.
Well, I think the major goals that I'm concerned with are ones that fall quite naturally from my training and from my experience. I sincerely believe that there is an awful lot that could be done in state government to reduce the level of waste and to increase the efficiency of state government. The training that I have in public finance, the training that I have in private sector finance has indicated or has shown me that there are ways that budgeting can be done, there are ways that taxation, that revenue can be raised, that could do a lot to change the overall governmental structure and make it more efficient, more responsive to the needs of the people.
If elected, I would like to continue working for the 51st District, for the residents of Monroe and Owen County, as well as for the entire state of Indiana. I'm concerned about the level of education, educational funding for local schools, for universities, for libraries, for a variety of other state services, and I'm concerned that the services are not being given to the people in the most efficient manner possible.
Under the current Indiana tax structure, local governments, schools, and libraries are faced with the prospect of having their property tax revenues frozen in 1980. What would you, as a legislator, attempt to do about this situation?
Well, I think there are two approaches that we can take. Obviously, in the face of inflation, which is something that we've all had to learn to live with in the last few years, property taxes per se may have to be increased somewhat. The question is not whether they should be controlled. Obviously, they should and must be. The people of the state of Indiana demand that they be controlled. The current property tax relief program is probably the most popular program that's been instituted by any state government anywhere in the nation in the last 5 to 10 years. But I think that we can control taxes without freezing taxes. In other words, we could increase the levy that local units can raise by a certain small amount to take care of increases in inflation. Okay? The other alternative that we have, and one that we certainly do need to explore, is the idea of perhaps increased state funding for some local services. That may be a better alternative in many respects because the revenue sources that the state has are both more flexible and more adequate to raise additional revenues in the face of inflation. They move with inflation. They are income taxes, they're sales taxes, and they tend to generate more revenue automatically as inflation increases. So I think those are the two key ways we can approach that issue.
I believe the 0% increase for funding for 1980 was put in there to force the 79 legislature to do more work in terms of figuring out how local government should be able to finance themselves. I very definitely think that the legislature will deal with this problem, and I would certainly like to see more local leeway, whether that come in property tax or some form of local option income tax. I think most of us would favor a local option income tax, which would tax all of the taxpayers, not just corporations as well as individuals. And so we're looking to that idea in this next session, some kind of mix between property tax and local option income tax.
Which services and programs provided or partially funded by the state of Indiana do you feel should be expanded?
I think that one of the first things that we have to look to is the situation with our roads today. Right now we have a multi-billion-dollar investment that is quite literally going to pot because we've not taken it upon ourselves to adequately fund repairs and maintenance of our roads and highways. I think in part that's due to a reticence on the part of state legislators to take a hard stand on a very, very difficult question. I don't like the idea of increasing taxes. I don't think any legislator does. But I think we're at a point where we may have to do that with respect to the gasoline tax to get adequate funding to solve that problem. There are other areas that I think we need to look to. The state of mental health facilities in the state of Indiana is very much inadequate. It's to the point where we can't even get federal funding for many of the mental health programs that we'd like to institute, just simply because our hospitals and our facilities don't meet standards that the federal government requires. Whether we agree with those standards or not, they don't, and we need to do something about that situation. I think the state of funding for higher education in the state of Indiana, particularly with respect to the Bloomington campus of Indiana University, is very much inadequate. And I think that the representative from the 51st District, which includes the university campus, has a very special obligation to see to it that the Bloomington campus is represented and well represented in Indianapolis. And there are a lot of other things that we could talk about, but those are three particular priorities that I have.
Well, if you look, since we've just talked about the property tax situation for local units of government, if you look at the rate structure for local governments, you see that public schools take the lion's share of property tax rate. So it seems to me the state should continue to pick up the cost or the increased cost for local schools while allowing local governments more flexibility in taxing themselves locally. But local schools, I feel, are a state responsibility, and for that reason that the state should try to even out the funding for the 304 school corporations. In addition, I'm very concerned that we have an extremely large surplus in this state, and yet we're causing tuition to go up for students on campuses of our state universities. We are seeing good faculty leave the state to go to other places where they're paid more and where the benefits are better. I think we must look at better funding for our university systems. Also, I'm concerned about the community mental health centers, community retardation centers, and I think that there could be expanded funding for those kinds of centers and perhaps look at better ways to use our state hospitals in those areas.
Which services do you feel are wasteful or unnecessary and could be eliminated or curtailed?
Well, it's awfully difficult for someone who's not been in government to point fingers. I don't think that that's fair at this point. I think that it's necessary that anyone who starts making statements along those lines make sure that he's done a lot of research with that respect, or in that respect. No, I don't think I want to point fingers at particular functions or at particular departments at this point.
I think if you look at Indiana's services, which are paid for by taxpayers' money and provided by the state, that we're really not very extravagant in providing services. I don't know, I suppose I could go and talk about everything being presented in a more efficient way. Certainly we're all striving for that. But I don't know of any particular area where this state is wasting taxpayers' money.
If you are elected, will letters and phone calls from your constituents determine your votes on issues?
Well, I think that any representative, by the nature of the job, has to take into account the opinions and the feelings of his constituents. But, on the other hand, it's too easy for a representative to be swayed by reactions from small groups of people who may not represent the views of all of his constituency. So I think that's a fine line that a legislator has to ride. And I think it's one we all do have to ride in weighing the voice of the people, seeing that it really is the voice of the people, and then taking it into account, as opposed to flying in the wind of any public opinion, no matter how small the group that holds that opinion might be.
Certainly letters and phone calls and just meeting citizens on the street who give me their opinion have a very great impact on the way I think about certain issues. However, during a campaign, I try to run an open campaign and let people know my general philosophical bent. There are certain things that I don't think people could change my opinion on, the Equal Rights Amendment, for example, or better funding for universities. I don't think that if there was a letter writing campaign, it would noticeably change my opinion, because I have run an open campaign, and for the last 3 elections, in any case, people have sent me back with an overwhelming majority knowing those opinions. But certainly it's very important to talk to people. We try to have open forums during the session. We're trying to have open forums or television interviews during the campaign to let people know exactly how we feel on certain issues. And it's very important, and I appreciate letters and phone calls and welcome them.
My name is Anthony Pizzo, and I am a candidate on the Democratic ticket for state representative in District 60.
And your professional and personal background?
I'm a doctor of medicine. I am specialized in the field of pathology, and as such I am the director of the laboratories at the Bloomington Hospital. I also teach part-time at the medical school at Indiana University, and I'm deputy coroner in Monroe County.
My name is Jerry Bales. I'm running for re-election as state representative in the 60th District. I'm married, have 2 children, Jennifer age 15, Leanne age 13. I live on the west side of Bloomington out in Glen Oaks Drive.
I have been active in the political process for many years. I did run successfully for this particular position as representative in the 99th General Assembly in the years of 75 and 76. I served and at the time as a member of the House Ways and Means Committee as well as the Public Health and Environment Committee. In the interim, both in 75 and 76, I served on interim study committees, 3 of them actually, which had to do with the Certificate of Need legislation and the health care delivery systems, and then licensure primarily for professionals in the state of Indiana.
Well, I think basically what I've tried to represent in the past is the working people, middle-income America. I do not represent any special interest groups. I'm not an attorney, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a farmer. I just work every day for a living. And I think this is basically my reason for becoming involved. I've also got 20 years background in banking and finance, which gives me a good working knowledge of the budgets in the state of Indiana and exactly how tax money should be spent.
My major goals, if I were elected, would be to continue my efforts to reform the tax structure in the state of Indiana. I certainly would work in the field of education to increase the state support for education. I feel that higher education also needs state direction support. I would work for a permanent solution to the roads and highways funding problem. I think that environment and health are two areas that I feel that I have done a good deal of research on, and I feel that I could contribute to legislation that would improve those particular areas.
I would attempt to, as I have the past 2 years, to represent the people of the 60th District and the state of Indiana to the best of my ability. And I think that's very important, is that the fact that they will have a voice in the Indiana General Assembly.
Under the current Indiana tax structure, local governments, schools, and libraries are faced with the prospect of having their property tax revenues frozen in 1980. What would you as a legislator attempt to do about this situation?
That's a twofold question, I think. First of all, I feel that the property tax in the state of Indiana tends to be regressive in the way it is managed. My own preference would be that the property tax would not have any more burden than it has. It would have less burden. And the way I would try to arrange this is to have more of the burden of education fall on other taxes rather than on the property tax. I think that as far as local governments are concerned, they need a little more flexibility in their ability to serve the members of their communities and have some options regarding raising additional revenues. And this could easily be done without any more burden on the property tax, simply by shifting some of the tax load from the property tax and education to the other spheres, particularly the income tax.
In 1973, the Republican House and Senate passed what's referred to as a Bowen tax plan. Also the same thing, in 1977 we passed a second generation tax control package. At that time, we allowed local governments to raise theirs by 5% in 78 and 8% in 79 fiscal year. Property tax controls are out come December 31st, 1979. We do have many different plans that we're looking at. We want to put in and have everlasting property tax controls. But in the property tax control package, we want to have an inflation factor built in so that we do not crush local schools, local government, libraries, the things that are dependent upon local revenue from property taxes.
Which services and programs provided or partially funded by the state of Indiana do you feel should be expanded?
Well, as I indicated before, I think that the programs, certainly roads and highways, need to be properly funded. We really should have another look at the mental health institutions so that we could raise their standards to the level of the government minimal standards, so that they could so we could get some benefit out of Medicaid and Medicare in those areas. We should certainly expand our educational facilities, or at least properly fund those. We need some reform or some expansion in the area of environment and the natural resources.
We're going to have probably the #1 priority is secondary education. You know, in 1978, we allotted more money than has ever been allotted before per student in the state of Indiana. One of our major concerns for everybody is secondary education. We're going to have to put additional money into that. We're also going to have to put additional money into higher education, with basically our 4 main universities plus Vincennes. Also, we must look for additional ways to fund our local streets and highways, becoming if we have a severe winter in 79 as we've had in the 77 and 78 severe winters, I'm very concerned that our roads will completely deteriorate. You know, we've got billion-dollar investment in our roads and highways, streets. Roads must be repaved every 7 years. Bridges must be replaced every 50 years. We are not doing it. So this is secondary education, higher education, roads, mental health. I'm still very concerned about our local mental health clinic here, getting off the path. You know, I was able to in 1977. One of my chief concerns was the first day that we met as a caucus. They said, Jerry, what's your #1 priority for your district? And I said, the roughly $1.3 million that we need for the mental health clinic in the city of Bloomington. That we allocated. We've still not broken ground for that mental health clinic. I want it to move and move forward because I can see if we don't use it, that some other place who wants a mental health clinic is going to move in and take our money. That'll happen.
Which services do you feel are wasteful or unnecessary and could be eliminated or curtailed?
My own attitude is that there are a number of programs just in the state of Indiana which are relatively inefficient. My approach to this would be either as an oversight committee in the legislature to look a little more carefully into the operations of some of these commissions and agencies, but what the state of Illinois did this last year would be something that I would like the legislature to consider, and this is to get a blue ribbon panel of university personnel as well as respected business people in the state of Indiana to look into the operation of the state and to make recommendations to increase efficiency. In the state of Illinois, they came up with recommendations that would save them $500 million per year if these particular reforms were instituted. And I think that there are areas in the state of Indiana where similar reforms and efficiencies could be built into some of the things that we do.
We've got to look at our whole welfare budget. There's no doubt about that. I believe that there's 3 groups of people that we as citizens or we as members of state legislature must look to help, and that's the elderly. Very important. They've made our country what it is today, our state, and we have a moral and legal obligation to take care of those people. The second group we do is for the young. They're unable to take care of themselves. We're obligated to take care of those people. And the third is the mentally and physically disabled. We have got to look to fund those people. But in the welfare program as such, the workfare program, these type of things where that, you know, when we give something to somebody for nothing, and there's no such thing as a free meal because we're paying the tab someplace, but we take away a person's pride. And if a person doesn't have pride, they don't have anything. So consequently, we've got to have more work-related programs through our trustees and through our state welfare program. It's just a requirement.
If you are elected, will letters and phone calls from your constituents determine your votes on issues?
I make myself available to my constituency. I send out newsletters, or I did send out newsletters during my tenure. I certainly sought the counsel of many of my constituencies at the time that I was there. There were certain issues that I felt capable of making decisions on without that much input from the constituency, but I certainly didn't ignore my constituency. I think that it is necessary for a representative to reflect his constituency, and I would continue to publish my telephone number and my address in all the media that would accept them, so that I would be available to people who wanted to call, write, or even meet me.
It may not determine my votes on issues, but it certainly helps influence my votes. A good example was the budget 2 years ago. You know, that we had, and there's people now running around campaigning and claiming they didn't vote for a student fee increase out at IU. Well, they did. Anybody who voted for the budget in 1977 voted to increase the fees in the university. There's no doubt about that. There was no separate bill saying we're going to have more fees for the students at IU. I received a tremendous amount of phone calls, tremendous amount of letters concerning this issue, and that certainly helped me decide. I read every letter, answer every phone call that I receive. And I want the people to become very involved. I received, in 1977 session, I received close to 16,000 letters from my constituents. Every one of those was answered. Maybe not to people's satisfaction that wrote the letters, but phone calls and letters let us know what's happening back here. I voted for the gas tax increase in 1977. It was amazing the number of people who called me and phoned and wrote letters and said, hey, we support your position on this. I received 2 letters opposing my position, and they were both from outside of my constituency.
My name is Alan Thomas. I am a Democrat, and I am the candidate for judge of the Monroe Superior Court. As far as personal information is concerned, I should say that I've been active in a number of community activities for almost 2 decades, that my children attended local schools. Hannah graduated in 1971 from Old University School, and my 2 sons, Owen and Nathan, are graduates of North in 1975 and 1978.
My name is Kenneth Todd. I'm running for Superior Court Judge on the Republican ticket this fall. I'm 33 years of age, and I live with my wife Kathy at 116 Heritage Road in Park Ridge Addition on the east side of Bloomington. We've been residents of Monroe County since 1963. I grew up in Rush County and came down here to school, got my degree in economics in undergraduate school, and then attended the IU School of Law. And after fulfilling my military obligation from 70 through 74, we returned here, and I've been in private practice here since August of 1974.
I think I bring to this various qualifications of a very high order in the study and practice of law, in local government, and in just the history of public service. Let me mention just a few of these things. In law school, I was selected by my fraternity as Graduate of the Year, was also a member of the Board of Editors of the Law Journal, and an honors graduate. Since graduation, I have practiced law here in Bloomington and have been selected for inclusion in Who's Who in American Law, and more recently in the Dictionary of International Biography. In local government, I have served over a period of some years as both Bloomington Township attorney, as a member of the Monroe County Council. I am currently the civil attorney for the County of Monroe. I've also been appointed as judge pro tem from time to time in local courts, as well as hearing officer for the Monroe County Health Department and the Indiana Civil Rights Commission. I would be hard put to detail the public service. It goes back, as I say, for a period of almost 2 decades, beginning with the Children's Corner Cooperative Nursery School and running through all the traditional scouting and brownie activities and so forth on up to the many activities which I'm engaged in now. I should say currently I am a member of the House of Delegates of the Indiana State Bar Association. I am president of the Family and Juvenile Law section of the Indiana State Bar Association. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Monroe County Community Action Program and the Indiana Civil Liberties Union liaison with the ACLU Women's Rights Project, among other things.
I think my qualifications for the office could be best summarized by saying that I have had a good deal of courtroom trial experience, which I think will lend itself well to the requirements of the job. After graduating from law school in January of 1970, I was in private practice with a local law firm for approximately 6 months, And then in August of 1974, I went on active duty with the military as a legal officer. I was stationed in Great Falls, Montana from August of 70 to August of 72, and there in fulfilling my duties as a base legal officer, rendering advice to commanders and legal assistance to military personnel. I also had the good fortune of becoming involved in a good deal of trial work. At that time, that was one of the busiest court-martial jurisdictions in the Air Force, and I had an opportunity to both prosecute and defend a good deal of cases, and quite a few of them were tried by jury. I think that jury trial experience was very instrumental in my being appointed as chief prosecutor of felony level trials in the 2nd Judicial District of the Air Force in August of 1972. My duties there entailed traveling about a 9-state area in the southeast, doing nothing but trying felony level jury trials. I tried cases covering the entire spectrum of criminal activity, from assaults, drug cases, and things of that nature, to robberies, rapes, and several murder cases. The caseload again was very heavy, and we were trying jury cases on at least a weekly basis. And I think that experience was probably more intensified and practically oriented to courtroom experience than anywhere else I could have gone, or any other kind of job that I could have had at that time. In August of 1974, I was discharged from the service after completing my obligation, and I returned here to Bloomington and went into practice with a local firm. I've had some experiences since my return to Bloomington that I think are also uniquely geared to the requirements of the Superior Court judgeship. In March of 1976, I was appointed as probate commissioner of the Monroe Circuit Court by Judge Nat Hill, and since that time I've heard all civil mental commitments in Monroe County, which certainly gives you some opportunity to adjust yourself to difficult courtroom situations. Additionally, I served in a full-time capacity as Judge Pro Tem of the Monroe Circuit Court during the summer months of 1977 during Judge Hill's absence. And while most attorneys, I think, receive occasional appointments as Judge Pro Tem, it's a unique opportunity that allows you to serve the court and administer it on a full-time basis for a lengthy period of time, acquainting yourself with the problems and some of the possibilities of the job. And there have been other occasions that I've had to serve as Judge Pro Tem here. One additional item that I think is significant is that in the Air Force I was also certified as a trial judge and had the opportunity to preside over cases, including jury trials. I believe that the type of experience that I've had has allowed me to see problems from both sides of the bench, and I believe it'll lend itself well to the requirements of the Superior Court judgeship.
I think that with any court, that one has to say the primary goal is the swift, speedy, fair, and impartial administration of justice. I don't know that that's terribly informative in response to your question, but it's as succinct an answer as I can make.
Well, I suppose that it should be the primary goal of any judge to administer the laws of our state and our nation on a fair and impartial basis, and hopefully all judges do try to do that. Two rather generalized goals that I have, which I feel are the crux of this election, or certainly one of them, one of the cruxes of the election, involve a contribution to return respect to the judicial system and contribute to confidence in the judicial system on the part of the people in the community. I believe that the courts here are well administered. I've tried cases in a lot of courts in a lot of jurisdictions, and I think we have excellent judges in Monroe County. But people, in making their assessment of the judicial system, rely on incidents, statistics, and information that they hear about other jurisdictions as well as here. There has been a great deal of talk over the last few years about a lack of respect in our judicial system and a lack of confidence in it. I suppose that's true at any time concerning the legal system, but it seems to have been more aggravated recently. I think that results from a lack of consistency in administering the laws, so that citizens get the feeling that the law can say whatever any individual wants it to say, and they feel that it is not the same for all who come before it. I think also that there have been problems created by our attitudes toward criminal sentencing, and I believe that many citizens feel that the judicial system has more concern for the people who are convicted of crimes and within its four walls than they do of those people who have suffered from crimes out in the community. I think that the only way that respect for the judicial system can be improved upon and that more confidence can be returned to it is by electing people who have had sufficient courtroom experience in the past and have the background and qualifications that you have some confidence when they enter the office that they will be able to handle the job. As most people in the audience probably know, the Superior Court is a trial court. They handle thousands of cases each year, and the first day after January 1, 1979, either my opponent or myself is going to have to be prepared to step into the job and immediately share their part of that burden. We'll have about 1,000 decisions to make each year that can either contribute to respect and confidence in the judicial system or can act as a detriment in that regard. And I think that because of that and because of recent changes in the Indiana Criminal Code, that it is more important than ever for citizens to closely evaluate each of the candidates, become familiar with their background and qualifications, become aware of the issues that are involved, and the stance of each of the candidates on those issues. 1978 is a time when people must not randomly select the person who will fulfill that office, but a time in which they must make a very detailed investigation and cast an informed vote for the better of the two candidates.
I'm Patricia Pat Haley, and I'm a candidate for Monroe County Clerk on the Republican Party. And I'm the widow of Boyd Haley. I'm married. I was married for almost 30 years. I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and I'm a lifelong member or a lifelong resident of Monroe County.
Ruth Hickman, Democrat, Clerk of the Circuit Court.
Well, I've worked in the voter registration office since its start in 1971, so that's given me a considerable background for election work, which is part of the clerk's duty. I've worked in the courthouse. I've been worked with budgets and that type of thing, so I have a little background there. I have worked in the business community for the last 25 years. I've managed a business and personnel and that type of thing, and so I feel like that I'm qualified to handle anything that would come up in the clerk's office.
Okay.
As far as the office goes, the professional background that I've had, I have been a deputy in the clerk's office for 5.5 years, and I've also worked in the voter registration office for 2.5 years. That's the experience that I feel that is the most important in running for this job.
Well, actually, most of the clerk's jobs are mandated things by statute of what they can do and cannot do. And I think probably that efficiency in the office, courtesy extended to everyone that comes into the office, and cooperation between other offices in the courthouse are goals that I would like to maintain.
Well, in the past 8 years, the office has undergone a number of changes. One of the first changes that we did when I went into the clerk's office with the present clerk was to redo the child support system that was very slow and sort of archaic, and it's been put on a bookkeeping machine and made the disbursement of child support monies very efficient, and so that is a process, of course, that will continue. And then with the expansion of the court system, there are now 4 superior courts in the circuit court, and then the small claims misdemeanors division of one of the superior courts handles a tremendous volume, especially traffic fines, And that, of course, needs to continue keeping that up to date and current. And the other thing, old records are being microfilmed to make necessary space available, since the the space in the building is limited, and we're not going. It doesn't look like we're going to be doing too much remodeling in the real near future. Things like that have to be done to come up with space.
I'm Emily M. Wade. I'm a Democrat. I'm running for re-election as the Monroe County Recorder.
I'm Virginia Hudson, and I am a Republican, and I am seeking the office of Recorder. I have been a lifelong resident of Monroe County and attended the public schools here.
All right, for this particular office, the major qualifications are that a person be a citizen of Monroe County, Indiana, and I would say a high school graduate at least. Now, as to my qualifications, I am a citizen of Monroe County. I have served as the recorder for 4 years. I'm very familiar with the various jobs and duties that go along with the office, plus managing the office. Also, I've had experience as a legal secretary, so I am familiar with the legal lexicon that is used and terminology. Also, I hold 2 degrees from Indiana University. I think this, plus all my experience in the community, has given me a lot of knowledge of various ways in which I can help this office become much more than what is merely stated in the Indiana Code.
I have been a legal secretary for many years, and I am familiar with the Recorder's office. I feel I am qualified and that I can give service to the taxpayers of Monroe County.
Well, let me see, my major goal is working towards the automation of the record-keeping system in the recorder's office in particular. The record system we use now dates back to the early 1800s, with the exception of a couple of typewriters, a Xerox machine, and an adding machine. However, such a goal will cost a great deal of money. I am going to use my grant writing experience to go after grant money for this improvement, which is badly needed, rather than go to the county council and ask them for money from the Monroe County taxpayers. I want to get it from the federal government, from a whole bunch of taxpayers.
Well, to be a full-time official and employee of the Recorder's office, and try to increase public relations in the office.
Okay, I'm Sam Kreitz, candidate for county assessor on the Republican ticket. I'm 42 years old, and I've lived in Monroe County all my life, born and raised here. And I'm currently trustee of Washington Township.
I'm Charlie Packard, candidate for Monroe County assessor on the Democrat ticket. I retired from the Air Force as a major in 1964, became a real estate broker, and worked during reassessment in 1969 for a contract firm out in Owen County for a year.
I'm a trustee of Washington Township and also act as township assessor. And I think that in itself pretty well qualifies me for the job.
Well, the qualifications, I suppose, would be county assessor for 8 years, familiar with real estate, being a broker. That's about it.
Cooperation with all county offices, and especially Township Trustees' office. We need more cooperation and more help for the Township Trustees and our Township Assessors.
I don't see any major goals. I wouldn't see any change at all. I'd like to continue the good relationship I have with the taxpayers and the people of Monroe County.
Well, I'm Marie Harlan, and I am seeking the county commissioner's role, and I am a former teacher. I am married and have 3 children. My husband works for Sears, Roebuck and Company. I am seeking this position because I feel I have come prepared to do a good job, and I have a real field record of commitment to the community.
I'm Philip Rogers, Republican candidate for County Commissioner.
Well, going back to my earlier statement, I feel I'm prepared. I have served on the Bloomington Traffic Commission for 5 years. Approximately 4 of those years I served as an appointed chairperson. And I have served on the Citizen Participation Council of Monroe County. Now, this is a group that originated in 1974, and on the basis of the initiating efforts of 7 people, we have seen come into Monroe County almost $2 million worth of community development block grants. In that particular role, I have visited various areas of the community to let them know that this money was available. We've talked about the kinds of eligible activities that exist, and have offered and actually participated in developing proposals that have been funded. So this has been, I feel, a very important part of my preparation. I've served on the Monroe County Community Action Program Board, a group that deals with low-income needs. I've been appointed by the governor to serve on the Indiana Advisory Council for the Legal Services Corporation. This is a group that provides for legal services for low-income and moderate-income peoples. I feel that my service on the board of the League of Women Voters has been particularly important too, because in that position I served as committeeman for the Land Use Committee, for the Local Government Structure Committee, as well as the Monroe County Roads and Streets Study Committee. All of these things would be pertinent to the job of County Commissioner. I feel too that deals with the preparation, and as far as the commitment, well, we are Monroe County residents by choice. We have had opportunity to live elsewhere and have chosen not to. We have decided that this is an excellent place to raise our children, to grow old in, and because of that, because of the quality of life that attracts our family here, I would like to participate in helping to keep that quality of life at the point or better that it is.
Well, I've had 2 years as county road superintendent and 8 years as county commissioner.
Well, I'm trying to analyze what the problems are in Monroe County. I guess we could condense them, saying that the biggest problem in Monroe County is to provide effective government within the means that we have. And that's a real challenge, because of all the governmental levels, I feel that county government is probably the area where financial needs are most crucial. There are essential services that must be given, and there are other services that should be investigated. And to do all of this within the means of the county is really a task. I would think that there are a number of ways of at least addressing this problem. I feel that the provision of efficient and affordable space needs is a necessary thing. I think that we have to keep and attract effective employees by having fair employment practices and having working conditions that cause them to feel that the county cares. I think that we have to have road programs that are planned rather than intuitive. I think we have to also participate in some federal programs that are studied and found to be beneficial for Monroe County.
Well, I think we have several problems: our space need, landfill, and of course we're always concerned about our county roads and county bridges.
How do you feel county government space needs can best be met?
Well, the status of space needs at this time is that there is a bond issue that has taken place, and in fact now we have a remonstrance group indicating that they in fact will collect enough signatures to back this off. The petition dealt with the purchase of the Masonic Temple to provide space. However, if in fact the remonstration group is successful in their efforts to back off the petition, we have explored two of the viable alternatives this year. We have addressed the idea of using the Masonic Temple, and we also have looked into the idea of a city-county building authority. And both of these have met with failure if in fact the petition drive is unsuccessful. I understand that legally the community cannot look again at a bonding issue for a year. And I would propose that in that year we get the identifiable groups and people together and try to work out something to solve the needs. I think for 27 years we haven't had space needs addressed. This year we've had a lot of activity. And as a result of the activity, I think one positive thing that has come out is that the people are very aware of the needs that exist. And that's the beginning of solution of that problem.
Well, personally, I'd like to see a wing added to the courthouse, but of course this, maybe we can't afford it, but this is a goal I will seek anyway.
Okay.
In which areas do you feel that the cooperation between city and county governments could be expanded?
I think in the area of flood protection. Now the city has just gone through and made amendments to its planning ordinance, identifying areas that are in fact subject to flooding. And I think this should be expanded into the county because we do in the county have additional areas. I think in the road constructions, roads don't begin or end at county or city lines. And I think that has to be an area of cooperation. I think, too, in the area of planning, because we want all of Monroe County to enjoy a quality of life.
Okay, how would you attempt to bring about this cooperation?
I think communication is very important. I have watched the space needs issue evolve, and the one thing that I come away with is we really need levels, governmental levels, to sit down and communicate, talk out the problems and talk out the possible solution, and then if need be compromise and come to a final conclusion.
City County Plan Commission could be expanded, I think, merged, and this would help the cooperation and the growth around Bloomington.
Okay, how would you attempt to bring about this cooperation or this expansion?
Well, I think this would have to be between the mayor and the city council and the county council and county commissioners.
Robert Harrell, the Republican candidate for 1st District County Councilman, was unable to attend the taping session. As a result, only his opponent will appear.
Yes, I'm Ronald E. Weber. I'm a Democrat, and I'm seeking the County Council Office, District 1. And I'm 40 years old. I've lived in Monroe County for about 10 years, and I teach state and local government at Indiana University. I've served on the county council before from 1974 to 1976, having been elected at large to the office. I have served on the County Tax Adjustment Board. I've served on the Board of Directors of the Monroe County Community Action Program. I've been chairperson of the Bloomington Workable Programs Committee. I've been on the County Jail Task Force. I'm presently on the County Data Processing Task Force. These are some of the things that I've been doing over the past several years that I think are relevant to this office. There are several goals that I'd like to achieve. First, I'd like to see that the County Council does a better job of representing city interests, the city people who also live under Monroe County's government. I think there have been some problems with the recent council in terms of serving these interests, and I'd like to be a spokesman for these interests. As you know, the district that I seek to represent is an all-city district under Monroe County government. Second, I'd like to see support continued and perhaps even expanded for some of the programs that I worked on when I was on the council before. I'm particularly concerned that there be adequate funding for the Monroe County Police Department, that there be adequate funding to deal with the problems at the Monroe County Jail. I also think the courts are very important, and they need to be supported as well. I think the third thing that I want to see accomplished is I want to be sure that the revenue sharing monies that Monroe County government gets is used for programs that benefit city residents as well as residents of the county who lives outside of the city. And I think too much of the revenue sharing in the past couple of years has gone to programs that simply benefit county residents who live outside the city.
Okay. How do you feel the county government space needs can best be met?
I think the county space needs can best be met by some kind of cooperation with the city. And I think given the constraints of Indiana law in terms of the debt limitations of county government, we can only do it if we have a city-county building authority. So the first thing I'd want to see accomplished would be a city-county building authority. Second, I'd like to see that authority be given some guidance as to the kind of solution. And I prefer a solution that will essentially reduce the proliferation of county government facilities. We now have county government in about 5 different locations. I would prefer a solution that would involve 1 or perhaps at the most 2 types of locations.
Okay, how would you propose to improve the county's solid waste disposal system?
Well, the county has a number of problems with its solid waste disposal system. One is the whole trash pickup program itself. I think that should be administered directly by county government and directly provided by county government rather than under contract. I think there have just been too many problems with the contract mechanism for providing that program. We need the accountability that comes from employees working directly for the county, and I think there are ways to do that. Second, the landfill obviously needs improvement. I think the solid waste district is on its way to talking about some solutions to the landfill problem. I think, however, the solid waste district, I think, must put its emphasis, let us say, over the next several years on the question of how do we take our resources and recycle them. Get along the way in terms of some kind of recycling solutions. And I should say that I think the county's solid waste district's approach toward user fees as it's moving at the moment is the wrong way to proceed. I think they're putting too much emphasis on user fees. They're going to end up in a situation in which people who live in the city, who I think I should be speaking out for, are going to be double taxed through city government, and if they live in apartments, they're going to be triple taxed through the user fee scheme. And I prefer a simple tax or use of county revenue sharing money for the purposes of funding the solid waste district.
John Rogers, the Democratic candidate for 2nd District County Councilman, was unable to attend the taping session. As a result, only his opponent will appear.
My name is Elmer Riggs, and I'm seeking the office of County Council in the 2nd District. As far as my background is concerned, I was born and raised in Monroe County. I am a minister and, of course, have been out of the county many years, but have lived back in the county and right in Bloomington for the past 10 years. Well, I suppose first and foremost would be that I am a Monroe Countyan because I was born and raised here. My family was raised here, and I love the town and the county and the people in it, and I've had more than 40 years of public experience, and I think that certainly qualifies me to be concerned about the things that are of greatest interest to the people of our county. Well, I think, stating it briefly, effectiveness in government, eliminating unnecessary waste, making our tax dollar go as far as it possibly can, and be absolutely fair to everybody in the county.
Okay, how do you feel the county government space needs can best be met?
Well, I've answered that question before. Recently, the idea of a city council authority was brought forward and voted down, and I am not in favor of it being done with a city-county authority, because I think a city-county authority takes the government out of the hands of the people and puts it in an appointed situation where the people absolutely lose, at least they lose direct control. They have indirect control, but they don't really have control of the government. It becomes another type of bureaucracy. I think probably the best way to solve the problem is to get the legislature to change the law so that we can do it the way we want to do it, with the city and county cooperating together.
Okay, how would you propose to improve the county's solid waste disposal system?
I think there's plenty of space in the county to dispose of our waste, and I think good management is all we need to take care of it.